help me find where to write 1/2 on the number line. She said,
first draw a line with 2 arrows.
then she sang a song, here's how it goes. 0 to 1 is the whole that we split apart. The denominator tells us into how many parts. Make a line that starts from 0 to the first mark. And 1/2 is what you'll find when you get that far.
Good morning, grade 8. Today we're going to be doing fractions, and that was the fraction song. I'll give you a link to it and you flip through it at the end. Today we are going to look at estimation in fractions. So fractions, we're just starting a review on fractions, and there's all our different things that we're doing on fractions. There's the proper fractions, improper fractions, mixed numbers. So we know those. We reviewed those in our last lesson. So today we're going to talk about estimation. Estimation. For example, in fractions, 4/5 plus 3/8. If we looked at that without having the time to have a pencil and paper and to figure out the answer, would we think that that would be over or under 1? That's what we mean by estimation. We want to know what is a reasonable guess for our answer, and that's really important in math when we're doing either equations, or we're doing equalities or inequalities, or we're doing word problems. If we have some estimation in our mind of what the right answer is, and then we work through it and it doesn't look anything like what our estimation is, or it does, then we know where to proceed from there. So we're going to start with an activity that we can use at home. You know at school that we put number lines on the desk, so that will help you with your estimations. So I'm going to show you how to make a number line of your own at home. So I want you to go and get a piece of loose leaf or printer paper or an old magazine or a piece of newsprint and cut off the long side, and then come back with that and a piece of paper, and I'll see you back in a minute. All right, hi again. All right, so I have mine. I have a yellow strip of paper. So I want you to first take your piece of paper and I want you to fold it in half. Okay, so we're going to fold that in half. Make a really good crease. All right, and then open it back up again. Now it doesn't matter what size your piece of paper is. If you fold it in half, your crease is at the half mark. So what I want you to do is at this end, put a 0. At this end, put a 1. And then right here where your crease is, write the fraction, the number fraction, 1/2. So I'm going to do that on mine, and I'll show you mine. So this is something what yours should look like as well. So we have 0, we have 1, and we have 1/2. All right, so the next thing we're going to do is we're going to take the ends and we're going to fold those into the crease. So take the ends and fold them into the crease, and then make a really good crease again. There, when we open that up, we have 2 more creases. This crease is halfway between 0 and 1/2, and we know from our last lesson that halfway between 0 and 1/2 is 1/4. So we'll write 1/4 in there. We know that 1/2 is the same as 2/4. So between 1/2 and 1, which would be 4/4, is 3/4 or 3/4. So let's write those in. 1/4 and 3/4. All right, so this is what our paper number line looks like so far. 0, 1/4, 1/2, or 2/4, 3/4, and 1. So let's fold those back into where they were before, and we're going to do one more fold. We're going to fold the end here into the center crease. It's getting a little bit thick, but this is our last fold. Give it a really good crease, and the same for the other side. We'll give that a really good crease. And then we'll open the whole thing back up again. So here we are. So now we have a crease here and another one here, with one here and one here. Now halfway between 0 and 1/4 will be 1/8, isn't it? We learned that on our last lesson. So we'll write 1/8 there. This is the same as 2/8. 1/2 is the same as 4/8, so this will have to be 3/8. So let's write in 1/8 and 3/8 here. So So this is what mine looks like so far now. I have 0, 1/8, 1/4, 3/8, and 1/2. So halfway between, this would be 4/8. This would be 6/8, wouldn't it? 3/4. That would be 5/8 here, and this would be 7/8 here. All right, so we'll write those in. 5/8 and 7/8. So this is what we have so far for our number line, for our benchmark that you can use at home. And you can make one anytime. So we have 0 1/8, 1/4. We have 3/8, 1/2, 5/8, 3/4, same as 6/8. And I can just write that in beside there so I can remind myself as well. And 7/8 and 1. So there you have a benchmark just like the number lines you have on your desk at school. So if you need something for a benchmark to figure out, well, how big is this fraction? Where would it go on my number line? You could make one of those if you can't find the one you have, or you can use this one that you've made so far. So that's what that's the concept we're working on today, is benchmarks. And there really are two ways to figure out the size of a fraction. One is using benchmarks. I'm just going to move the easel over so that you can see. One is using benchmarks so that when you have something like a third, where am I going to put a third on my number line? Is a third larger or is it smaller than 1/2? Well, if we think about the denominators and we think about, for example, a pizza, if we divided a pizza in half, there's 1/2. And then if we divided a pizza in thirds, not a very good third, but you can see you get less of a pizza, wouldn't you? So a third has to be smaller than 1/2. So I would guess it would be somewhere here. Gives me a benchmark. 1/2 is my benchmark to know that 1/3 is smaller. If I had something like 4/5, so let's write 4/5 in here. Let's write it up here actually where you can see it. 4/5. 4/5. So we had that. Well, we know that that's going to be larger than 1/2, and it's going to be pretty close to 1, isn't it? So I know that that would be somewhere down here. The other way you can figure out the relative size of a fraction is using relative size. For example, if we had 1/10 and we had 1/4, if we just look at the denominator, that tells us the relative size of each fraction. If we divided your brownies, our big pan of brownies, into 4, you'd get quite a large piece of brownie, wouldn't you? If you divided your brownie pan into 10, you can see that you're going to get a smaller part. So you can see that 1/10 would be a much smaller section than 1/4. And that's another way that you can tell the size of fractions. So for today, on the flip grid, you're going to have a response. And what I'm going to give you are 4 fractions. And I want you to tell me where you would find them on the number line. And give me your reasons why you've chosen to put them there. And you can actually show your number line. Or remember, there's a whiteboard and a blackboard on the video response. And you can use that to draw your number line and show me where they are and then give me your reasons. There's other things on the flip grid as well. There's some practice problems you have for finding relative size and for guessing whether something is over or above 1 when you add or subtract fractions. There's also a link to some daily STEM activities that are kind of fun, and I put a link to the PowerPoint from the last lesson and a link to that fraction song. You may wonder why I have the Frozen book up here. Well, it was cold this morning, so I was playing some songs from that. And as you know from your music classes, there's all fractions are everywhere, and fractions are in music. We have quarter notes and eighth notes and half notes. So remember that fractions are everywhere. Thank you for joining me today. I'll see you next day in class, and I'll see you on the next video. Thanks. Have a great day.